The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hi, this is Ashley Eckstein, the voice of Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away. From movies, books, TV shows, and more, we are looking at the deeper themes and meanings found in the Star Wars universe. And this week, we are discussing the latest episode of The Acolyte, Teach/Corrupt. And be sure to follow The Secrets of Star Wars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your favorite podcast app, or on the StarQuest YouTube channel. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, on X, where we are at SQPN, or on Instagram, where we are at StarQuest Network. And also be sure to get your official Secrets of Star Wars gear over on our shop at sqpn.com/merch. I'm your host, Thomas Salerno, and joining me tonight on the panel is Kathryn Laffrey. Hello, Kathryn.
Hello, Thomas.
Hey, and Patrick Mason. Hey there, Pat.
Howdy, Thomas.
Hey, all right. So, but before I do a brief recap of this episode, Kathryn, I just want to get your thoughts on the series so far, because we haven't had you on yet for one of these reviews.
Okay. I've been trying to figure out the best way to describe how I feel about what I'm seeing. And it's not a love-hate. It's more like a, that's nice. And then, oh, no, I hate that. But then I was thinking, train wreck? No, I wouldn't take the effort to go see what a train wreck looks like. 50-car pileup, same thing. You might slow down and take a peek, but you don't really want to look. All I could think of was storm damage.
Storm damage.
Storm damage. I would take, and I have in the past, taken the effort to go see where like a straight line wind has gone through, or a tornado, just to be like, oh my gosh, look how different that is.
Mm-hmm.
That's Acolyte. Storm damage.
That reminds me of when Hurricane Irene hit up here. I think that was in like 2011 or something. In my hometown, we were near the water, so there was flooding. And a guy who was right on the edge of the downtown area where there was all 4 or 5 feet of water had set up a sign on his property, said, "Parking, $5, see the flood."
Nice.
So immediately somehow in some industrious soul trying to make money off the hurricane.
Yeah, I spent a good 2 days chainsawing through my backyard after we got a good straight line wind. That was about a month ago now.
Oh,
but yeah, it just knocked down all kinds of trees and branches, and
it's interesting.
They did an episode like that, didn't they?
Yeah.
Throw a lightsaber, knock down a bunch of trees. It's a storm. It's storm damage.
I guess with the storm metaphor, my thoughts are more like a tornado, I guess, because it happens suddenly. Because for anyone
randomly,
and because for anyone who's been listening, I was pretty positive the first few episodes. I actually thought the series started out strong, and I wasn't able to make it for the discussion of the episode called Night, and that one just left me feeling very cold at the end and a bit bewildered. And I'm like, what happened? It was almost like a switch was thrown where my enjoyment went from moderately high to I'm not enjoying this anymore. And this episode did very little to change that, unfortunately, for me. But we'll get into more of it. But yeah, I guess This episode really does follow up from the last one, and I'll do a brief recap first. So the stranger takes Osha to a mysterious unknown planet and dresses her wounds. He claims to be a former Jedi and says he wants the power of 2, and convinces Osha to try on his cortosis sensory deprivation helmet. Meanwhile, back on the Jedi ship, Master Soul struggles to get an emergency message out to the temple on Coruscant. A rescue team is dispatched, including Master Vernestra. May attempts to get Soul to come clean about what really happened back on Brendock all those years ago, but inadvertently reveals her identity to Soul, who stuns her. Soul then leaves orbit and jumps into hyperspace just as the rescue team arrives, who surmise that Soul himself might be responsible for the massacre. When May awakes, Soul says he's ready to reveal the truth. Okay, so just this episode by itself, what do you guys think? Well, what are your thoughts about where we are at the series at this point?
I'm going to let Patrick go first.
I apologize. My speaker turned or my headphones turned off real fast there.
Oh, no problem.
And so I didn't catch what you were saying.
Oh, just so Pat, what are your thoughts about the series after this episode, where we are with this series and where we might be headed?
So I think I'm going to key off of what Robert said when we did the Day episode, which is that once you get past the midpoint in a series, there's normally a big reveal, right? And the big reveal in the Night series was that the Master was, I always want to call him Chimera, but it's
right.
Like
Chimera?
Chimera.
Yeah.
Chimera. It's Chimera, right? And that fell kind of flat because I think we all expected that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was, and my other problem is I'm actually perfectly okay watching Jedi bungle up politics and bureaucracy and because I think that's kind of where this is going. I am never okay with Jedi getting beaten down quickly and easily. I want more lightsaber fight. I'm still angry about episode 3, the fight scene with Palpatine where he just kills those 2 Jedi Master. Yeah. And I know that was done for actor reasons and stuff, but still, I'm still angry about it. And I did not like the scene in this one where he kills like the 3 Jedi Knights in like, a 2-minute span, and then has a good 5-minute fight scene with the apprentice. And you're like, with the paddle on it. I'm like, but sorry, just had to get that out. Anyways, so where
Jackie
we're going
was my favorite.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, she was great.
And I think that's one of the things. Like they killed off. Like now we're left basically with just Soul, May, Osha, and Chimera. Dadgummit. Chimera.
Yeah.
And that's it, right? Everybody else is like dead, and except for the one Jedi Master who's kind of in charge of everything. So I think everything going forward from here is sort of, we're going to find out Chimera's background, Soul's background, and maybe where the Jedi Master fits into all of this.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be some decision point for both May and Ocean. I assume it's going to come with them together at the same time. And I'm kind of okay with that portion of the progression. But I think I feel very similar about Night. I didn't like that episode as much as I think I wanted to, or it didn't live up to what I wanted it to be. That could have been that. That's usually my problem with shows. If I don't like a show, it's because I expected it to be something that it turned out not to be.
Is not to be. Yeah. So, yeah, same very much here. If I don't like a show, it's because my expectations were wildly out of place. But it's like, yeah, I agree. I think next episode, they really need to reveal what happened on Brendock, because they've been teasing it for several episodes now, saying, we're going to reveal it, and then they don't. And so I think that we only have 2 episodes left. So I think they really that needs to be the big reveal for next time, is what happened? What is Soul hiding? But,
it's all starting to feel like Lost. You're waiting for what's going on and the big reveal, and then you get that ending, and you're like, "What?" Sorry, it's just no. I don't know. I have no idea where this is going. I don't even know if I care where it's going. Like I said, I'm watching it because it's storm damage, and I just want to see how much they're going to ruin what once was a good timeline, and just trying to figure it all out. And I don't know. There was stuff in this episode that I was like, can you please be a little more original than starting off the show with a remake of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon? You know. That was, I swear, I was like, that's like scene for scene, except for the overly not PG-13 scenes. Right. But then again, they got really close. I guess I do not like shows where they remake and glamorize evil as being misunderstood and good as being bad.
Right.
I did not like Maleficent. I did not like.
Oh my God.
What was the stage musical where they flipped Wizard of Oz on its head?
Wicked.
Wicked.
Oh, I couldn't stand that. I hate when they do that because
the deconstruction. Yeah.
It's just giving everyone an out who doesn't want to face reality. It doesn't want to face truth that there's good and evil out there. Instead, it's like, I'm misunderstood. I'm not evil.
Yeah, it's like, and Kathryn, you and I were talking about this a bit before the recording, and I was like, it seems to me that Chimera is basically saying, the Jedi's rules don't let me get in touch with my emotions, with the Force the way I want. And so I'm like, that the Sith want power. It's not about like he seems almost like too, and I know like he could not be. It's possible he's not Sith technically, but
I still don't think he is.
Mm-hmm.
I think even
yeah.
I think even with his mention of like the power of two thing, because that harkens back to episode 3 where they're doing the blocking and sending with the Force. And they talk about the power of 2 being stronger. And so
the power of 1, right.
I still think he's somehow tied to the Coven. Obviously he is not a member, but I don't know.
Many people have said, and I did not catch this, that in Night, during Chimera's fight scenes, there are hints of the Kylo Ren theme, and that the people, the showrunners have said that is significant. So I'm like Knight of Ren, maybe, or the proto Knight of Ren. He has a red lightsaber, and the Knights of Ren were sort of like Sith adjacent without being technically Sith, and they carried red sabers. So,
and who's the creepy mother figure that ties in with the 3 Mortis gods, where she has that like
Abeloth?
Yeah, with the big, wicked, creepy smile.
With the grin. Yeah, from Legends.
As soon as I saw his mask, I'm like, is he just trying to be like her? I don't know. I just kinda,
I don't know if they'll bring Abeloth into this yet. I feel like that's for maybe after Ahsoka is done, because I feel like there's more to do with the Mortis gods in her storyline.
Yeah.
And Abeloth is basically like, right, yeah.
Yeah,
I just felt like the whole opening scene was, I don't know if the writers intended this or if they just didn't understand it, but Chimera and Osha was like, I'd say if I was teaching catechism again, I would show this to my students and say, that's Satan. That's subtle.
Yeah.
That, like, twisting the truth in his favor. It's, when he tempts you, it's not, oh, do this bad thing because it's a bad thing. It's, you're going to do this thing and you're going to think it's a good thing, but it's really not good for you.
The one thing that struck me is that he's almost better at Palpatine at better than Palpatine as presenting the dark side as like a live option, as like something that's good. And I mean, Palpatine kind of revels in being evil.
Yeah.
Whereas this, you know, this guy reminds me almost more of Sauron from the Lord of the Rings, kind of the master manipulator.
Yeah.
You know,
and we get from him that he's a fallen Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether or not that's true,
right?
You know, no telling. But I kind of assume it is because he seems to be very good at weaving in the kind of, you know, whether he's a Sith or not, but sort of the dark side approach to the Force into Jedi theology. I mean, I don't have a better word. I guess philosophy. I don't know.
I guess.
It's in between those. But it's,
right. Yeah.
Into the Jedi philosophy. And he knows how to play on Osha because he knows she failed out, right? Like, I don't, but it's not like he learned anything about Osha from May because May didn't know Osha was alive. So the question in my mind is this still part of the long con? Like, is Osha still... Did he know about Osha beforehand? Is he still trying to play both of them to try and get that power of two thing, whatever that means? And this, I think the title for this episode was really well done. Like, you know, teaching / corruption, because that's what he's doing with Osha, right? And I love that scene where she says, "You murdered like people," and he's like, "I just killed people who were trying to kill me." And I'm like, no, that's not how that went.
Yeah, it's like, but it's almost like gaslighting, because he's trying to get you to question what you actually saw and what you actually believe about what happened, you know?
No, he's definitely grooming her in the worst, fullest sense of grooming. It was downright creepy.
Yeah, it's very unsettling.
As a woman, seeing a man grooming a woman, her like that, I was just like, no, run away, girl, run away.
Right, which he gives her the option to do to get to the ship.
Does he?
It's true enough, yeah. But at least he appears to be presenting the option, which is all he needs to do, you know, to give you the illusion of choice.
Right.
Exactly.
Like you actually have an option.
Yeah.
Speaking of that world that they're on, anybody else get Octo vibes from that unknown planet? It's like constantly overcast, waves breaking on this rocky island with green moss everywhere, caves. And I'm like, okay, I don't see any porgs. There's those cute little elephant snail things, whatever they were. That was
so cute.
That was
the
cute.
Little finger puppets.
Finger puppets, and they had a little family, and that was cute. But I'm like, I don't see any porgs. But is this Octo? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the whatever the finger puppet things were. I thought that was very interesting. The two scenes we get with them are very familial scenes, right? It's, you know, it's kind of a mom and dad, and then like mom and dad and kid, and that's a very different experience than Osha and May had growing up, right? They grew up in a coven, ostensibly without fathers, right?
Right.
You know, and we don't even know how they were quote unquote made. And so, like, the concept of, like, there's a family with a child, and you can, I mean, like, it's these weird little puppets, but they sort of, like, just, like, radiate love somehow.
I know what you mean, yeah.
And then you're juxtaposed against, you know, what you've seen with May and Osha, and their sort of almost quest for some kind of family. You know, and Osha's part, you know, leaving the coven to go trying the Jedi, and that didn't work out. And then May's part with the coven that gets somehow taken away from her, possibly by her own actions. And then this new attempt with Chimera that goes sideways, and now she's with Saul. So it's, I don't know, it's almost like this little hint that, like, No, really, like a loving family life would have caused all of this stuff not to happen.
Right.
I don't know. That's kind of the I don't know. Maybe they were just trying to be cute with it, but for me, it was very much like this is how things should be.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like subliminal in that way. Right. Yeah. Very interesting. But yeah, I was just wondering about the Octo bit because I'm like, okay, that's the origin planet of the Jedi. But it's maybe they just want to give you sort of that feel that this is a planet of beginnings or origins or mystery or something like that. It's definitely, we see later, it's the place where obviously he's getting the cortosis ore from. There's veins of it in his cave, from which, I assume he created this helmet. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting, like, and it just that they call it unknown planet. They don't give it a name, so that made me even more suspicious. I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Like, is this a place we've seen before? But I want to touch on some of the things that Kymir says again during his sort of his pitch, as OSHA calls it. When she mentions the dark side to him, when he describes the path he's gone down, and she's like, "That's the dark side." He hits back with, "That's semantics."
Ugh.
That, like, the dark side, that's just like, apparently, I guess what he means is, that's just what the Jedi call it. So he's trying to push moral relativism here, that, like, this isn't really, and I think we've talked about on this podcast before how even the Jedi don't have like a complete, integrated worldview. They do their attempt to kind of almost in a Vulcan way suppress emotions is negative and comes back to hurt them. But it's like the Sith go to the other extreme where they just embrace emotions and just act on impulse. Whatever I want to do, or whatever I want to get, whether it's, power, influence, whatever, I'll just do that, for the sake of it. But he just calls it semantics. So I think the parallel I would draw there would be kind of like the Pharisees. So if you look at the Pharisees, they weren't trying to be bad, right? Like they're all, biblically in the Christian tradition or the Christian religion, they're painted very bad. Like, you calling somebody a Pharisee is a name calling tactic. Yeah.
But in their own way, they were trying to do it as well as they could. They were trying to follow the law. And a lot of what they did that Jesus criticized them on was them looking at a law and saying, okay, well, and I think the not taking the Lord's name in vain is a good one. Like I don't want to ever take the Lord's name in vain. So we're just never going to say his name ever. And we're going to come up with these other letters we'll use, and we'll just do it in this place. And God's probably like, that's not what I meant. Like I meant, don't use my name in vain. And the Jedi feel very much like that in the, drawing into the Force with your emotions often leads to, what we're calling the dark side or a dark path, or using the Force for entirely selfish reasons or hurting people with the Force. And so we're just going to cut off our emotions. And that way we'll never be tempted into that realm and we won't have to deal with it. And I'm like, you've gone too far. Like you were saying, you've gone too far the other way. And that ultimately doesn't work out.
Yeah. Whereas with the practitioners of the dark side, where it's Sith or others, they almost mold their emotions as kind of their whole identity. Like he says to OSHA something to the effect of your anger and pain is who you are. And I thought that was an interesting reveal about this kind of ideology, that it's like those emotion, your anger, your pain, your loss is is who you really are, rather than, I don't know, then that seems very almost surface level, you know?
Yeah. I found it interesting. The most emotional person in this episode was Soul.
Oh, and kudos to the actor for a brilliant job, even when he has no lines and it's just, you know.
Oh yeah,
he did a good job, brilliant. But it seemed out of character.
Because I think he's come to that point where he's starting to break down. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just a little. It was too much. It was like, you know, the Euro Cup. I don't know. It's like, you know, watching a soccer game versus a hockey game. It was just like, it was just a little too much. I'm sure that's, you know, he did a good job acting for sure, but it just felt so foreign to everything that, I don't know. I guess I've understood about the Jedi. I feel like everything that I've enjoyed about Star Wars is kind of getting bent. And it's like, I was never into a lot of like the comic books or the games. And I feel like there's almost a little too much of that coming in now. So I'm getting lost with it, where before it wasn't necessary to read all of that. But
right. And definitely this being set in the High Republic era, which is mostly a novel and comic book thing, doesn't help.
I know. Yeah. It's like I read the first High Republic thing up until the point where I was getting tired of watching every character like die.
Well, they've kept that going.
Yeah, I was going to say.
No, so I was like, oh, great, not this again.
Yeah. But I get what you say about the feeling of disconnect, because it's almost like watching, because I think, at least I made the connection between Soul and Qui-Gon Jinn pretty early. They seemed very similar. And think about watching Qui-Gon Jinn have an overly emotional reaction to something. It's just ridiculously out of character, right? You're like, no, that's just not. I mean, you in the middle of a fight, this guy sits down and meditates, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
You can't get more even keeled than that. And watching Soul do that, it's jarring, because you're like, well, I wanted you to be Qui-Gon Jinn, and obviously you're not. But then it speaks to, you know, what happened. Tell us.
Whatever he did is eating him inside, and it's starting to the cracks are starting to show. Yeah.
I also like the reduction of someone to their emotions. It reminds me very much of the sort of identity politics we've got going.
Oh yeah.
Whereas you're this, and that's what you are. And, you know, you're not a whole person anymore. You don't have all of your thoughts and feelings and emotions and experience and, you know, family origin and all of the things that, you know, come together to make you, your spirituality, your religion and all that. No, you're just this one thing, and that's you. And you need to fit yourself into that little peg, be that peg so you can fit in that hole. And that's your whole thing. And like that is, and it's seductive because, you know, it's easy, right? Like being a whole person's hard, turns out.
It's called adulting.
Yes. Yeah, we made up a word for it. But it is so very reductionist and almost inhuman.
Which makes me, for the last two episodes, I've been very suspicious, and I'll hold final judgment on it until the whole series is played out. But it almost feels that the writers are sympathetic to the Sith / sort of Sith point of view, in the sense that they're having the dark side character say things like this. You know, it makes me very suspicious. But like I said, like, you know, that could be me reading too much into it, and I just need to wait to see the series play out. But I believed from the beginning, even in the first few episodes, which I was really enjoying, I predicted that the series would have a downer ending. I just didn't think the slide down into the downer part would be that abrupt. That in the episode night, everything would just start like crashing to the ground. Like, immediately. But
I just find it, again, throwing off the timeline that I felt like I understood pretty well from the books that I've read, from the movies and around the movies and supporting the movies, to everybody jumping on the bandwagon of, see how corrupt the Jedi are, see how corrupt the Jedi are, they're just into politics. And it's like, no, I mean, when 1, 2, and 3 were out, and a lot of the books leading into it, there was a lot of emphasis on the fact that Palpatine was so strong as a Sith that he was an incredible puppet master at all levels. So much so that, as Yoda said, that they can no longer sense the Force like they used to be able to. Mm-hmm. That there's something happening. And there are books leading up to it going, it's like blinders on. What's going on? That there's this great suppression of the light side of the Force because of Palpatine. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know. I just find that all of this happening as early as it is like a caricature of sometimes what people thought the church was like in the medieval time. It's like, oh, everything was backwards, or even
now, what people think of it now. Yeah.
It's like you have a few people, yes, that lose their way, get lost, cause problems. That doesn't mean the whole institution is corrupt.
Right.
If the whole institution is corrupt, there would be no church. There's church because Christ said there's going to be a church. The whole Jedi Order being completely corrupt. It
rotten,
It wasn't corrupt. It wasn't rotten. It was overcome and came down to being very small before it could rebound. And of course, they've taken away the rebound. I miss the fact that the whole Jedi Academy series doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, I love that stuff. Yeah. But yeah, and I feel like they have created a thing where I hope we get it before the end, that we need to see the Jedi response to the Sith critique of them.
Right.
Because clearly this show is meant to be from the dark side point of view, to present a critique of the Jedi. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But you also need to balance that with the show of okay, because otherwise it just looks like, if the Jedi are largely hypocritical and corrupt, and they don't do anything to establish that there's good here left fighting for. I go back to what I said a few episodes ago about the Arthurian mythos, where it's okay, many of the knights in that do not live up to the chivalric ideal, yet always Camelot and the Round Table are held up as ideals worth striving for, worth defending, And I feel like that still needs to be a factor, that the Jedi Order, the Republic, are ideals worth defending, worth fighting for. And despite corruption and bad actors that exist, even at high levels, I just think they need to show that. Otherwise, it just becomes cynical and depressing.
Yeah. I think for me, all of it hangs on the truth about, what happened. What was Soul's part in it? What was, I can't remember her name, but the green lady.
Vernestra?
Yeah, Vernestra. Her, and I go back and forth on her. Sometimes I think this is all her fault, and sometimes I'm thinking well, maybe not. And she's such a strange character to me, but I think they did that on purpose. I think she's sort of supposed to be Vulcan-like and difficult to read.
Cipher,
yeah.
She also seems a lot like the character in Doctor Strange. The bald woman. What was that character?
Oh, the ancient one.
The ancient one, yeah, because they had accused her of using dark magic that she told everyone else not to touch.
That's true.
And this feels like just a rehash of that kind of character.
Interesting, yeah.
Especially the fact that they're both bald.
Yeah. If I had to make a prediction, she probably knows who Chimera is.
I think definitely.
She probably trained him. Maybe was his master. That'd be my guess.
Maybe gave him the scars.
Yeah, that's the big theory out there.
I've seen people say, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So but it all kind of hinges on that, because I think I like this from an exploratory point of view. If you have maybe not even bad actors, maybe this was just mistakes made by good people, right? And because number one, like, good people don't have themselves eaten up inside if they've, bad people don't eat themselves up inside after they've done something bad. Obviously, Soul and the rest of these Jedi feel really bad for whatever happened or whatever they did. So that points to them being at least virtuous characters. The question I really have is about how their mission got put into play, and if there were mistakes that were made, or if there was a bad order, and then how that. And honestly, I kind of like that as an exploration in the Jedi, because we see, that we have the parallels in real life, both within the church. We have bishops who have told people, priests and whatnot, to do things that they shouldn't have done. And then the other hand, we have bishops and priests who try to make the best decision they can, and they make a mistake. And then we have the same thing in wartime, right? We have, generals and commanders and whatnot make very questionable decisions. And then what is it to the people who are trying to follow through on those orders? And that's the kind of story I'm hoping this turns into, not an indictment of the entire Jedi Order. Because I think if they do that, it's like the half of the fan base that they managed to keep after episode 8, they'll cut in half again.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one thing you said, Pat, really struck me was that, evil people are not eaten up inside by the bad things they've done. And it reminds me from, I think it was in the episode Night, where Chimere says to Soul, "I've accepted my darkness. What have you done with yours?" Mm-hmm. So in other words, like, Chimere clearly does not care about the bad things he does. He takes people's lives without a second thought. He does not lose sleep over any of it. Whereas Soul is clearly struggling with the fact that, he has done things that, leaves an incredible burden of guilt on him. And we need to have that scene of almost confession, where he comes clean, because that other Jedi Master, it haunted him so much he commits suicide.
Yeah.
Rather than confess to the Jedi Council what he's done, he takes poison. So like, one of the themes, I guess, of this series is, like, how do you process guilt?
Mm-hmm.
Do you just, like with the dark side, just completely ignore it, paper over it, and say, I'm not even gonna consider it? And how do good people process guilt? So yeah, I'm definitely like I said, these last 2 episodes have left me feeling kind of cold. That may be their intention. But I'm willing to be, brought back on board here. But like you said, Pat, I think it all depends on what their end goal is. Is it this exploration of mistakes made by good people, or is it an indictment of the Jedi Order or something? Yeah. Or because or a deconstruction of the, because please, entertainment people, we've had enough of deconstructions. There's plenty of that kind of stuff in real life. We don't need it in every other thing that happens. Yeah.
I don't know. It's like a story someone told me where it was like, okay, if you have one math teacher who's doing some really bad things, does that mean every math theory and problem and solution is wrong? You know what I mean? It's like, people automatically say, okay, then, or if this one person does something wrong, everything they're involved in must be wrong too. It's like, they're not separating the person from their job.
Right. And speaking of guilt too, Chimere clearly plays on Osha's guilt about leaving the Jedi Order. She blames herself that she wasn't good enough. that she failed, she says. Not that she denies, being kicked out. She believes that she left, because she failed. He says the Jedi threw you away. So he's manipulating her to use her guilt, I think, to control her. You know
who my favorite character's been so far? That little guinea pig man.
Yes.
What's his name?
Basil.
The Basil with us?
He's the only one who seems level-headed.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, he is a Tynan, and the Tynan character who was in one of the old Han Solo novels had a good head on his shoulders, so that must be like a sort of D&D like species characteristic for this particular alien.
Yeah, level-headed.
Yeah. Well, who is that little rat character in the Chronicles of Narnia?
Creepy Cheap?
Is that his name? Yeah, the one who is always like so bold, and there you go. That's what this guy is. Just
I love how he's trying to find the correct adapter outlet for Pip. That made me laugh. I was imagine how many different adapters there are throughout the whole galaxy.
And that it's one of the things I love about Star Wars. It's just so real. Like, every droid manufacturer builds them with a different lightning connector,
proprietary,
that you have to, and so you end up with these million ports, just trying to find the right one.
You gotta wonder though. Pip's factory reset mode gave him Sith eyes.
Yeah, well, it reminded me of when they reset 3PO in The Rise of Skywalker. They did that factory reset thing on him. His eyes turn red. Yeah.
And with Leia's little Lola, the ladybug droid.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing. Red eyes.
Yeah.
Or eye.
I was very sad when Pip got reset to factory settings. I was like, they can bring it back, right? Right?
I was like,
I thought maybe he starts speaking in Spanish.
Like Ortiz or something. Little
Toy Story throw down there.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. I think you were right, Pat. The last time I think Basil is largely a practical character.
Yeah,
there may be some CGI, or motion capture, stuff overlaid over the suit actor, but I think that just the way he moves. I'm like, a CGI character doesn't move like that.
No,
I'm like,
no. He's got to be practical.
Yeah.
He almost sprained her ankle. I mean, those moves were pretty good.
Yeah, one other thing that Chimere says towards the end of the episode, speaking about loss, he says, when you lose everything is when you're finally free. I thought that was interesting because, again, for a lot of the dark side characters, it's about this freedom to do what they want, freedom from attachments, but not in the Jedi way of freedom from attachments where it frees them to serve the common good. But for the Sith and for dark side characters, it's this freedom to just be selfish,
Free from constraint so that they can follow chaos instead of freedom, which means you want the greater good for those around you.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly.
Yeah. Whereas, if I remember this correctly, it could be not, but true freedom is the ability to choose the right or the good action.
Mm-hmm.
True freedom is not the ability to do whatever I want. That's our kind of modern bad understanding of what freedom is. Real freedom is the ability to understand and then to actually be able to make the right or the good choice, because what sin does to a person is it ties them up into whatever I want is just the sin that's most appealing to me. And, everybody has their particular button that, the demon just hammers on because, screw tape letters.
Yeah.
if you ever listen or read to those, you know how that works.
Yeah.
And so like actual freedom is the ability to say, no, I don't need to be selfish. I don't need to do that. I can do the right thing and the good thing. And freedom isn't like I can do whatever I want, because doing whatever I want for human beings always ends up being, oh, you're doing that exact same thing over and over and over, and it's destroying you.
Right, and it's enslaving you, and it's very for another reference. It's very much like in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. The ghost of Jacob Marley is in chains.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells Scrooge, these are the chains I forged in life. Don't you know that, don't you know the weight of the chain you bear yourself? So like he's for all his free choices of doing these bad actions over and over again, of being a greedy, stingy hypocrite, Marley has created these he's created these chains for himself. Yeah.
I've got the Muppet Christmas Carol song playing in my head now.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is by far my favorite depiction of that of the Christmas Carol. But
for me, it's the Magoo Christmas Carol.
Oh yeah,
Oh my gosh,
that's the one I grew up with. Yeah.
Nice.
And it's Christmas in July right now.
Yep.
With what do you think Chymere's angle is with pressuring Osha to put on the sensory deprivation mask? What do you think that's about? Because he says, it's you, the Force, and what you bring with you, which echoes what Yoda says about the cave.
Yep.
On Dagobah. So,
yeah, he's just manipulating every Jedi truth he's ever learned to twist it and to just ease her step into the dark side. And just, I think the best way to see how far he was able to seduce and manipulate her is there's one scene early on when she has the lightsaber at his neck and he caresses her forearm. Total creeper. And then she, in almost a mimicking of that, caresses the helmet. And it was just like, oh, this is just, going so wrong because she's about ready to become his slave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I have to assume that the cave or area he's in is likely a dark side focal point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Much like the pit in on the island with Luke and, the cave. And so I assume that is, a dark side focal point. And so getting her to immerse herself into the Force after reminding her about, her anger, or after telling her, your anger is who you are, your loss is who you are, which is opposite the Jedi, what you've survived makes you who you are. And then, kind of playing on her as he's walking through that episode with her. And then this is sort of I'm putting her into this sensory deprivation zone where it's just her and what she's bringing with her. And what I'm making sure she's bringing with her is, thoughts about the Jedi, casting her away, and about her anger and her loss being what's important to her. And I'm doing it in this place that's a bad place, like that is tied to the dark side. So I think this is his, ultimately he's got to, at some point she has to make a decision, and he's like, okay, this is the best way I can manipulate the circumstances such that she decides for me.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately he does have, if he wants a more loyal person than May, say, he has to go hands off and let her make that decision. And I think that was all a setup to try and get that to play out the best way he could.
Do you think he wants just one of them or both of them?
Yeah, after what we said in our discussion about the power of two and how that calls back to the teachings of the Coven, I feel like maybe he wants both of them. And he's just sort of, he's working on one right now, but that his ultimate sort of goal is to have both of them and to have their power together. Because going back to that episode where we see them growing up in the Coven, they really didn't, grasp that ability to sort of work together and use the Force together. They've always either been apart or at cross purposes. And I wonder if he knows somehow that because of the way they were created, that their power together will be some immense power, or they're like a dyad in the Force or something like that. So, yeah, it's like I'm really starting to suspect that he does want both of them.
Yeah, I think it's definitely both. And I think, he's gotten made to the point where if she surrenders, then she's going to be put on trial because she murdered, at least 2 Jedi. So he's got her to kind of the point of no return. Like, you've done the terrible things, and you might be on the run from me, but you're also on the run from them. And so now I'm going to work on Osha to get her in that spot too. I'm not sure how it's going to play out in the end. I really don't. I'm just very curious.
Yeah, that's the one thing that still interests me, is that, like, I do want to see how this plays out and how they play it. And are we certain that this is a solo miniseries and that they're not renewing this for another season?
I don't care.
Because I'm just saying, they have 2
I'm gonna
episodes.
Be straight up honest. I'm like, whatever.
I know. Yeah. They have 2 episodes to wrap up this story in a satisfying way. And
there's only one thing I want to see in live action desperately, and that's the second book in the new Thrawn trilogy that was written, where you have flashbacks of Thrawn working with Darth Vader and Thrawn working up with Anakin
in the Clone Wars.
One of the best stories ever written, and that live action would be fabulous. And I need a story like that. I need something that's fabulous, connected, and mystery at the same time. Because I would have rather had Star Wars branch off to follow the Chiss than and knowing that the High Republic looks like this. I had always expected High Republic to look like the High Gothic era and just the incredible things that were happening at the time, Grand Cathedrals being built. Well, where's, Grand Civilization being built? This just seems, like I said, we're just watching the storm blow through and tear it all down.
You've still got the Senate and the Jedi wrangling for power. As usually, there was that one scene when the senator's on the phone and is like, we need an independent review of the Jedi, and that smacked to me of the taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is in dispute. Or it was just like, I'm like, my eyes glaze over. I'm like, ugh.
You start going, why'd she have to sign the treaty?
Yeah, no, that's one of my bugbears. Why does she have to sign the treaty from Palpatine's point of view? That doesn't make any sense. But anyway, I don't want to go on a whole tear on that plot hole. But one quick thing about the Cortosis mask, though, I like that we sort of end with this sort of Vader breathing homage. That was very creepy and well done.
Yes.
I'll give them that.
Really well done.
It was interesting to actually see what you can and cannot see through those eye slits, too.
Yeah, very little, shadows kind of, but which makes it even more impressive that he was able, to take down all those Jedi without seeing anything.
Yeah.
And I wonder too if the final play for the Jedi on this is to cover everything up by pinning everything on Soul, because they sort of seems to be the direction they're going.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, the minute he finds out it's May, he zaps her and then, off into hyperspace. And then, she wakes up, not chained, but, handcuffed to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, we're going to have a chat, which is, I almost feel like we're going to get kind of a very similar or almost, maybe opposite sort of conversations between May and Soul that we got between Chimera and Osha, except from a very different perspective, right? Because May is a prisoner versus Osha, who theoretically was not, right?
Right, led to
hopefully
believe she is not a prisoner. Yeah,
right. Hopefully, if the directors and writers are good, they will show how May really isn't a prisoner through the course of her conversation with Soul. At least I hope that's what's going to happen. Then again, we've only got 2 episodes.
I know, yeah.
Like, you have a lot to cram in here.
And why did it take Soul so long to figure it out? I mean,
did he not sense people feel different in the Force? I get that he's distracted by grief because his whole team has been wiped out, so that's probably the answer.
But still, I mean, that's just that threw it off a little bit for me. I mean, we had the great little, gerbil fight, but but yeah, that's just kind of, I was like, dude, you should have caught on a lot sooner. All you gotta do is pick her bangs up. She's got a huge tattoo on her forehead.
Yeah.
Oh, that too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I think what tipped him off, right, was how she didn't seem all that broken up about Pitt, right? Was that the tell?
I didn't know if it was that or if the hamster guy finally got a message to him and said, hey, that's not the right one. She doesn't smell right.
Because I think the Wikipedia summary says that something she says tips him off, but it doesn't specify.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
So any final wrap-up thoughts on this episode?
I hope it gets better. I don't know if it will. So I'm only doing 1 episode. It's just kind of like, sorry. If something amazing happens, I'll put my comments on Discord. But right now I'm like,
Yeah, it was a slow episode. But I honestly think, it ultimately I'm going to hold judgment till I get it all right. But
yeah,
if they do it right and the writers are good and the directors are smart, then I really do think this was a really good episode because it really showcased how manipulative the dark side, fallen Jedi, who's swayed by the dark side and wants to entrap another fallen Jedi can be, right? Because we got a lot of that with Dooku, or not with Dooku, with Anakin and Palpatine in episodes 2 and 3, especially 3. But Palpatine was never a Jedi,
right?
He's always been Sith, and we get a little bit of that in Tales of the Jedi with Dooku. Palpatine working on Dooku, because Dooku is a fallen Jedi. But we don't really have fallen Jedi talking to another fallen Jedi, like trying to get them to fall. And I thought it was really good. Granted, if the showrunners or whoever decide to side with the dark side, and then I'm like, well, it was okay, you guys. You had something really good and you dashed it on the floor. Good job. But I'm kind of holding out hope because most of the Star Wars shows that have been done, I have really enjoyed. And I thought the storylines have been very good. And the writers did seem, for the most part, to know what they were doing. So I'm hopeful. I'm holding out hope.
Yeah, it's like I'm definitely open to being swayed, but for me, these last 2 episodes were rough, and I am just ready for it. But again, I predict a very grim ending, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Oh boy. But yeah, we would like to hear from you, our listeners. What did you think of this latest installment of The Acolyte? You can let us know by sending us an email at starwars@sqpn.com, or you can comment on our social media pages, leave a comment on our YouTube channel, or you can talk to us on our StarQuest Discord server, which you can find at sqpn.com/discord. But before we close tonight, we'd also like to thank our patrons, including Sherry S., Julietta M., Debbie W., Patrick B., and Annette B. Their generous donations help us to create the secrets of Star Wars and all the shows here at StarQuest, and you can join them at sqpn.com/give. Until next time, Patrick Mason, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me on.
And Kathryn Laffrey, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Thomas.
And I'm Thomas Salerno. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.